Hi, I'm Ari Hoekstra, and I'm going to be presenting to you on construction law. There are basically three different kinds of construction contracts, and they all fall under the design, bid, and build system. First one is lump sum, the second, cost plus, and the third, time and material, and I'm going to be going into a bit more of detail on those. Lump sum contracts are estimates put forth by the contractor to the customer. The contract is fixed before any work on the project actually begins. There's a fixed total price, and this bid includes the cost of material and labor, and then some profit margin that the contractor thinks is great for them, they think is worth it to them to complete this project. Oftentimes, there are benefits for early termination when they get the complete project done, or also phases within that project done ahead of schedule. A lot of times there are penalties if the project is completed behind schedule, and those come in the form of liquidated damages, and I'll talk to you more about those in a later slide. Another sort of contract is called a cost plus contract. The contractor will estimate the cost of the project, which includes the materials, labor, profit margin. However, the cost of the project is estimated ahead of time, but is basically contingent on the progress of the project. The profit of the project is determined by the set percentage of costs for materials and labor. Sometimes they have a guaranteed maximum based on unplanned delays, which implicate labor and material cost. So basically, there's a percentage of the total cost of the project that gets awarded to the contractor as the project is completed. Another sort of contract is called time and material contract. These types of contracts are made when build time and material costs for the project are unclear at the start. The contractor will establish a daily or hourly rate that they think is good enough for their company to complete work and eventually complete the project. The costs within the contract are specified pretty specifically and also categorically: work, the sort of work that will be done, materials, what kind of things they need to eventually erect and finish completion on the project. This is like dirt work, additional sand or gravel that needs to be brought in, concrete that needs to be brought in to be poured, any sort of steel, iron, or wood that will be used on the project, and then also a lot of times roofing materials, whether that's shingles or a rubber roof, and basically any sort of thing that gets put onto the project builds the thing to make it what they want it to be, and then overhead or profits that the company thinks they need to make it a worthwhile project for them. Typically, the customer will establish a cap cost or end of date for the project, and this basically ensures that the company doesn't sit around or waste material in order to get more of a price for what they want. These three sorts of contracts all fall under the design, bid, and build process. The first process is design, and it's done by an architect, and then the architect makes plans, talks to engineers, sees what is all going to be needed to get the project completed in the way that the customer wants. Multiple contractors then bid on the process of how it will be to follow these plans and build what the customer actually wants. Then the actual build process, the contractor with the lowest bid and generally the best reputation is the one that actually gets to build it, and then it is eventually built. I say lowest bid with a bit of grain of salt because there are some companies out there that will bid ridiculously low, and every customer that's ever used them before, customers talk to other customers, know that they may have occurred in the past where they took forever to build it, and the project didn't get done the way they wanted it to be, or that sort of thing. So best reputation does play a part in the bidding process. Liquidated damages, as I mentioned earlier, are pretty common in construction contracts. Projects are broken up into phases, and then each phase, as well as the entire project, has a set date of completion. If the phases are not completed by the set date, generally the contractor has to pay for it in the form of liquidated damages because of the delay in completion, and that is the delay in what the actual customer expected. I worked on a project at the Sioux Falls Airport this summer, and it's about a 2 year long project. It's still not done yet, but there are 8 different phases that will eventually go into the project. And say the company that I work for, Hogadorn Construction, didn't accomplish a certain phase by a certain time, the airport actually had to move around a bit in the different areas and the different phases that need to be completed on time. So for them, it was very hard if a phase wasn't completed on time, because then they couldn't do what they needed to do. So that's why a lot of times liquidated damages do occur. Public construction contracts are a bit different than private ones. It's working with the federal government, state government, county government. Just depends on the magnitude and where the project is actually located. Jobs pretty much strictly are given to the lowest bidder. Then there's a bit of a different way of paying for it and making sure the project is done well in the form of bonds with the federal government. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. Bonding requirements under the Federal Miller Act state that 2 different bonds must be made: a payment and performance bond when there's a public works project that exceeds $100,000. These bonds are paid to the government by the contractor. A performance bond is made to ensure a complete and satisfactory project. Say it's a road being built, that there's no potholes in the road, that the road doesn't have waves in it, as in a smooth road. And then there's also the payment bond, which is paid by the contractor, as I said before, and it usually equals the estimated cost of the project, and that's paid before any work is done. This ensures payment for material drivers, material deliveries, and in turn the material company, and then also subcontractor labor that can sometimes occur on a public works project, or any project for that matter. What can sometimes happen, and has happened in the past, and why the law was made, is the general contractor wouldn't pay these material companies or subcontractors, and then these companies would put a lien onto the government, but in turn the government can't have a lien on itself or any of its property. So then this act was put into place in form of the bond that is paid by the contractor to ensure that these companies do get paid in the end. Another interesting side of construction law, and something that I've seen in Northwest Iowa, is called bid rigging. In 2001, 3 Northwest Iowa ready-mix companies were charged with collusion based on the way that they bid jobs, called bid rigging. And it occurred on 3 different government paving projects. One of the companies is from Sioux Center, the other one from Orange City, and another one up by the Iowa Great Lakes. What would happen is the owners of these companies would get together before they would bid on the job, and they agreed ahead of time that one company would get the job, but all 3 of them would bid generally a lot higher than what would normally be estimated on a bid for this sort of project. Because these were basically the 3 big companies in the area, it was almost guaranteed that one of the 3 of them would get the job, and they would get it for a lot higher of an estimate than would normally be expected. The government eventually found out about this, and the companies themselves faced up to $100 million in fines. So it's a pretty interesting way of how enforcement occurs, and laws that are set in place based on collusion, that people can't get away with this sort of thing, especially with the federal government. And I hope you enjoyed my presentation and learned a little bit more about a different side of law and contracts that are a part of everyday life.